So you can see we have this rifle sitting in front of us. We just spent the last day building this from the ground up, fitting it to myself, getting a lot of training, but we have an advisor here. It's Mike from Praecore. He really helped us get this thing off the ground. He really was the driving force behind part selection, the rifle itself, what we were looking for, what caliber, all of those things. And Mike has a really interesting background. Praecore is his training company, and he's been around for a while, especially in the precision game. He has a lot of very, very interesting knowledge, I think, that we haven't been able to really find anywhere else. So, Mike, I have a couple of questions for you. So first, what is Praecore? Like, what is Praecore's purpose?
Praecore was founded in 2015 as a continuation of the military contract precision rifle classes I had been running for the last few organizations I worked with.
Okay. So, and you have a history, if you guys don't know, Mike has a history with jumping, right?
Yep.
So you kind of found yourself in the community with canopy control classes, giving those to the military, training guys how to be better jumpers. Originally, right?
I was a test jumper for a major parachute manufacturer, the same main canopies that you were using going through AFF. Sure. That company had a military component and built products that was specifically for the military free fall community, and I worked on the R&D side, perfecting, developing new products to answer the mail for new requirements as they were emerging. That, with an interest in precision rifle I had always had, helped me make that transition from the military free fall community into the precision rifle marksmanship.
Yeah, and that's something I definitely noticed taking your classes, that you're a very meticulous person when it comes to understanding whatever you're interested in. So I really appreciated taking the long range course. I learned, I have a history in long range shooting, but we went to a depth that, I had not really experienced before. So let's talk about some of the courses you offer because you obviously do contract work. Yep. So that course can be built and changed and configured, and the location can be different, and you can go anywhere. So that, if you're a military guy and you're looking for precision stuff, there's always that component. But sure. There's also an open enrollment and component now that you've just started doing in the last few years that guys can take. So tell us about those courses.
Well, when Fred came out and retired, started Counting Q Tactical, we teamed up to continue working together with open enrollment styles of the classes that I've offered as contracts. At my core and in my heart, precision rifle is my favorite. It is the thing that I put the most effort and emphasis in. There's so much minutia that you can get into. It requires and demands your attention to detail with every aspect of it, from the build process like we went through, with this particular rifle, to the actual shooting and the applied sciences that are available. Everybody's got these carbines, and I don't necessarily feel that level of minutia and detail is attractive to everybody, and I don't want folks to have to spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to find out this isn't for them. Sure. So that inherently was the point of the distance carbine series that Fred and I worked on.
Yeah, and that's the one I think a lot of guys have been hearing about, distance carbine, because you have students coming out of that class basically rediscovering their carbine. They were shooting at 200 meters and they thought that was kind of it. Sure. And then they leave the class shooting at 700 meters and fundamentally understanding that there's a lot more gun than they thought. Well, you guys heard it from the man himself. We're going to post the links to all of your stuff, your socials and things like that. If you're interested in precision rifle or carbine, you can get with Mike and get into one of his open enrollment spots. Obviously, if you're military, get with him as well if you're looking at some kind of contract vector to get him hired on to teach you this stuff. So without further ado, we're going to get started on the build.
You got to start with the barrel. And the Tikka T3 series of rifles, these are barrels made by Sako in Finland. They're phenomenal barrels. For a production barrel, I've not seen anything really perform as well right out of the box. 22-inch and change, 6.5 Creedmoor, 8 twist. It may not be perfect for the longer and higher performance 264 caliber bullets these days, but 8 twist will get it done from 130 to 140 grains is what you're looking for. Sure. Good enough contour that it's nothing crazy like an M24 MTU style contour, but it's definitely a little more oomph than a sporter. So a good balance on the tripod. It's going to be nice in hand, but there's enough meat there that it'll It'll definitely help you anchor and get set and dissipate heat well. Moving into the action itself, I was introduced to the Tikkas over a decade and a half ago. One of my first shooting partners was a big proponent of the Tikka T3s, and that was just based on his affinity for and appreciation for Sako rifles. And that individual went on to be a partner with a Kinetic Research Group, and they've just always seen the benefits of a tube style action like this inherently, compared to that traditional Remington 700, the way that action locks up with those 3 rings of steel and how it works. There's just so much more inherently going on with this right out of the box that you had to spend thousands chasing. Inevitably, there'd be a student or two that was like, okay, well, what do I get for my first gun? I have never seen this combination with a KRG chassis and some form of one of these precision-focused Tikkas not be a solid performer.
Where would you see this, barrel and action falling into the spectrum of cost, right? Like, obviously very low cost options out there, and then really ridiculously expensive. Where does this lie in that spectrum?
Definitely with production cost.
Okay.
I mean, this is entry level spend,
Sure.
entry level money when it comes to a precision focused build. I used to say it was one of the best rifles you could get for the money, and I think this combination single-handedly put a major dent in the custom short action precision market. There's not a lot of great solutions right now for feeding these things long actions. So, those of you out there that are interested in doing some type of a 300 Win Mag, getting into things like that, you got to get a little creative, and you're kind of out of luck. With short action, 308, 6.5, 260, you have a lot to work with to get going.
You touched on rifling, and then what length barrel did we select for this one?
So, because you decided you were going to go suppressed full time, with this build, and you were somewhat concerned of the overall length, the whole package. When I've got the stock folded, what I can work with and be able to get onto a ruck and move around properly. 22 and change. It's enough barrel length to get performance and full burn for 6.5. We've seen and experimented and tested gas guns that were much shorter and still perform very, very well, but 22 is a good solid length, and once you get a little bit extra here, they'll go. I mean, it'll push 130s and 140s to that 2670 benchmark. That's kind of what we got our fingers crossed for. We're going to see velocity wise out of this guy, and as long as we're getting the 140s up to speeds like that, then you should have some really good results. This will be very, very similar to the external ballistics that you get out of your 300 Win Mag with 190 grain bullets.
Awesome. And for everyone out there in YouTube land, you talked about the twist rate. Can you just just gloss over
Sure.
Why does it matter, and what is it? What is the difference between a 1 and 7, and what is happening when you go from a lower number to a higher number?
So basically, the twist rate is how many inches of travel down the barrel it takes for a projectile to make a 360-degree turn, and the longer a bullet gets, the more stabilization it requires. 8 twist is a happy medium. At one point in time, maybe when bullet construction wasn't quite as good, I think there was such a thing as overstabilization. You could go a little too much with the twist rate. Moving over to our 5.56 guns, and as the M16A2 program came online, the decision to go with 7 twist wasn't based on the M855. It was based on the tracer because it was so much longer. Those guns and testing, moving from the M16A1 with its much, much slower twist rate up to the 7 twist, which is almost twice as fast between the two rifles. The test guns with 9 twist and other things that they tried actually shot quite good groups. And a lot of people are down and on 8.55 and talk about how inaccurate and inconsistent that ammunition is. The M16A2, in testing before they finally settled on 7 twist, the accuracy they're getting out of that was quite a bit better than what we finally settled on. But bottom line, twist rate is just directly tied to bullet length. And those 140s are about as long as we can stretch out of a 6.5.
Okay. If the barrel and the action are kind of the heart of the system, the chassis is like the body. So we're going to encase this in something of quality, which you recommended KRG as a brand, and so that's what we went with. Tell us about the KRG.
The KRG has just been consistent for me. It's been a chassis that I have paired with Tikka T3s for as long as I've been recommending these builds. I tried a few other things to get started, and this has just always been a solid winner. Those guys that run KRG have always been Tika and Sacco fans. And
Okay.
they really built that chassis around this action. The Remington 700, that most of us are familiar with. The recoil lug is a piece that floats in between the action and the barrel is actually screwed in through that. There's a lot of additional machining work for a lot of accuracy you need to do with facing those things up so that you're getting those good harmonics and everything working. Well, the recoil lug isn't integrated into the action. It's actually part of the chassis.
Let's take it through all the stuff we have on the table and then kind of what we're going to use to attach it to the chassis.
Every bolt gun's a canvas. You really, there's no two that are out there that are alike. Based on the requirements you had, some of the stuff that we discussed ahead of time, I knew where you were going with it. I knew what additional accessories, clip-on devices, laser rangefinders you had in mind. So a few different accessories from our spigot mount that's going to change the center of balance where we're actually getting our front support. We're really going to be able to spread those supports apart when we're collecting that data and starting to really get into putting together a good algorithm. As you can see, we kind of hodgepodged a couple of things together. The heart of all the KRG systems are very, very similar. It's this backbone bedding block that the action lives in. And we've actually chosen to use the forend, just some polymer hubcaps basically, from another chassis that's a few steps down in KRG's line, just for the inclusion of the M-LOK slots here, that we're going to run a full-length Picatinny rail to be able to use some of the accessories we picked.
Yeah, so this is the Whiskey
3, right?
Whiskey 3 chassis, which has a folding stock and a lot of adjustment in the rear. And then we've snatched the Bravo chassis forend piece because we wanted the M-LOK. And we wanted the M-LOK because we wanted to use the rail slider pick rail from Arisaka. I did. That was something that I definitely liked your recommendation on my gas gun. And the reason why we want this on the bottom is because we want to be able to use the real magic, which is the slider.
Sure.
Also offered by Arisaka. And you were in the development of this product based off experience. So can you just tell us a little bit about why is this product important and why is it an advantage to have that particular slider on your bipod?
That's what. Personally, I mean, when we're mounting things to rifles, security is a big piece of it for me. I want something to mount securely to a gun and not come off when I don't want it to. And I've been doing this long enough that I was around when ARCA, which is camera equipment, basically was introduced to the shooting community. And the early iterations of ARCA had a lot of problems with slipping. Running military contracts up in the mountains of Sun Valley, we were frequently seeing supports made by quality manufacturers slipping under recoil and having bipods shoot off the front of guns. It just became a problem that I tried it. It wasn't really for me for these applications. I definitely can see the infinite adjustability and how desirable that would be in competition. The rapid mount and dismount, that's great, but it just wasn't really for me. So I went back to using Picatinny, and I really enjoyed a bipod that Knights Armament made that was able to relocate quickly. Frequently up in those mountains, if I'm working around some boulders and doing the positional shooting thing and doing angles and everything else, sometimes I don't have much more room than what we've got on this table right here to be able to get myself, my body, and I may not have a tripod. I mean, I'm trying to bring the tripod with me as much as possible, but rapidly relocating that front support, sometimes bringing that front support almost all the way up to the magazine well, with longer legs extensions. I mean, these longer models from the Atlas and some of the longer hairs. I mean, these guys, there's a bunch of support there, man, that you can get up off the ground and do what you need to do. But the ability to change from 30 degrees up to 45 degrees down, making a movement from not much more than 25, 30 degrees left to right, I liked that ability to rapidly relocate that support, and I knew it was going to be secure. So one of the things that we wanted to do was integrate a spring-loaded lug. So even if I move the bipod or my tripod to a location and it doesn't quite find a slot, a push forward or a pull back, it's going to locate and find that slot, the spring engages, and it's not going anywhere. You can shoot it that way. If you prefer to go full locked out, you can go ahead and twist that knob and there's no play whatsoever. What the guys at Arisaka really got right with it is that I can literally go from locked out to free sliding with one detent click. So it's quick and easy to move. I set it up myself with the adjuster. I'm a right-handed shooter. With the knob on the left side, I kind of reach up and choke it to pinch that adjuster, and it can move.
You know, something we didn't have before. It used to be, even if you had pick rail on the bottom,
Levers.
it would be a lever, or some kind of hardware that you were permanently torquing down, and then your bipod was at the fore end or wherever you put it.
You were stuck.
But now, I mean, as the length of your pick rail, essentially we can move this, wherever we want. We can also remove this.
Off the front, off the back, however you want to do it quickly.
Yeah,
turn it around backwards,
way,
whatever
take
we
it
need.
off completely if you don't want it on there anymore. So I think this is as far as technology jumps from when I was in the Army to now, this is the ARCA stuff I've seen, but this is definitely the best pick rail slider thing I've seen. Honestly, I've wanted this, and I didn't even know it was a thing until we talked about it. So and then we did kind of gloss over. This is the spigot, right?
Yep.
So what does this
accessory.
do, and why did we need one?
It allows us to jump out in front of the end of the handguard. So you'll have an extension on your handguard that I can get those front support and rear supports spread out even further. It also provides us a platform to mount a night vision bridge that this can locate here to where I can either bias that rail forward or backwards, depending on what clip-on systems, and we've chosen two that are kind of dissimilar so that we can get kind of the best of both worlds as to being able to make sure that we're mounting those clip-on devices with an optic that is that
So these would
long.
mate together.
And it can either go, diving board forward, or if we had a short form factor scope, you could also bring those guys back a little closer. Now, this will mount directly to the chassis, but you're going to be dealing with a really, really short scope. So something like the 12-inch form factor, 3-18s, etc.
Yeah. So this pushes us off the front end.
Sure.
Allows us to have the horsepower on the optic.
A little bit of standoff,
Yeah. Get some standoff there, and again, you need that. We need this to be able to, put something in front of our optic.
For sure.
Right? Thermal or a night sight, whatever that is. All right, so we talked about our mounting options and some of these accessories that we've purchased, and I think it's time to move on to the actual optic itself. And we chose to go with this Leopold. Tell us all about optics. What are things we should consider? Everything you've learned and your long history of working with optics. What are some of the lessons learned?
Well, this is the new Mark IV HD from Leopold. This is kind of our lessons learned from the Mark V series. Leopold dropped that a couple of years back in was probably one of their most exciting game changers in that they were really able to shave weight. That was a major requirement of that chasing that Mark V program. The super short, 3.6 to 18, 3 to 18 in Mark VI before that. You had those length and weight restrictions they were working within, and that was based on a specific weapon. And we were dealing with the SR-25s with 15-inch handguards that they wanted to fit basically that PVS-30 behind another optic and then completely have that on the rail so it wasn't getting out in front of muzzle accessories and things like that. We're not saddled with those restraints with a barrel this long and handguards like this for a bolt gun, so we've got a little bit more to work with, and we can open up to a slightly more powerful optic. 5 to 25, 6 to 24, I would challenge anyone to see the difference between 5 and 6 power on the low end and 24 and 25 on the upper end. It's a good magnification range for a bolt gun. We're being very proactive with these shots and picky choosy about them, and in my experience with all of the different optics I've seen in contract classes over the years, from Schmidt and Bender to Zeiss to Premier Reticles, Leupold, Night Force, it is my opinion that most variable powered optics return their best images at between 50 and 65% of maximum magnification. The Mark IV brings a lot to the table. This is a lot of lessons learned, input from competitors. We've got a really nice bold deck of elevation numbers on that first revolution. This turret system is they just keep getting better and better, more tactile feel to where you really don't get lost in the turret. The zero lock option is super nice that I'm not fat fingering it and thinking I'm on zero. It's easy to check that I'm locked out and on it. I got a little underneath in case for suppressor shift or some more advanced external ballistics manipulations that we'll get into at a later time.
First focal plane, second focal plane. Let's talk about it. Sure. I know it's if you're a long range shooter, this is amateur for you, but a lot of our viewers are watching this video because they're trying to learn, and maybe it's the start of their journey. So absolutely. This is first focal plane.
So this is first focal plane. What that means is as I adjust the power, the reticle stays justified to the image in that no matter what magnification I'm at, 1 mil means 1 mil. And it's going to grow and shrink. That reticle is going to appear to get smaller and finer and bigger and more bold as that image grows and we turn the power up. With a second focal plane system, the reticle is going to stay the same size all the time. So regardless of what magnification you're on, there isn't going to be a correlation to that, and that reticle is only going to subtend 1 for 1 at a specific power, most often max power. I know I just said a few moments ago that I really feel those scopes return their best images at between 50 and 65% of maximum magnification. So with some of the older scopes that we had to really crank, you found some manufacturers that did like big magnification getting up to 25 and 32 power, that they had a index mark on their magnification ring of that's where my reticle reads 1 for 1. This is what we're going to be using it on. Using a scope on max power all the time, it's like driving your car around bouncing off the rev limiter to me. You're asking so much of the optical system. Every little mistake is magnified. It's just a lot for the optical system to deal with. There's nothing wrong with going up and using that upper end magnification to take a measurement, to read some wind, to get a little information of what's going on downrange, but pull back to a more comfortable magnification to shoot.
And so with, when we're milling targets, right? When we're measuring things to try to estimate range. There's an inherent advantage to a first focal plane. We're not relying on a certain position to basically get that accurate mill measurement. It's just wherever this is, we can still measure based off of that. So just to clean that up for guys who haven't dealt with that or whatever, it's just something to consider when you are selecting an optic. And then another thing, when it comes to optics, a lot of questions I get are about reticles, right? If you go on Leopold, Nightfor, whoever, if you go on their website and you look at this optic or any other optic, they're going to give you options. What is like some advice that you would have for somebody who's selecting maybe their first optic?
So I think a lot of people select optics and reticles. They do it backwards. They start with the websites and they look at what's available and pick one that kind of smiles at them. That works for me, or I kind of like the way that looks. Or what is everybody else using? What are my favorite shooters using? Everybody's at different points of this journey, man. People understand different things. Some people have different backgrounds. I would really sit down in a vacuum, turn the computer off, and make a list with a pen and a piece of paper. What are the things that are important to you? First and foremost, we need a bold aiming reference, and we need to know where we're pointing this weapon system. So start with simple. Add the features you need as you actually need them. Do you really see yourself needing them? I don't need just in case stuff cluttering up my reticle. Now, if you're in a location that has a ton of dirt above and below your steel targets or berms right behind every single target you're going to shoot, we don't even need to zero these things with a grid style reticle. Some of the busier horse systems and things like that, I literally can hold center on that target, press a shot, get a wind dummy out there, see that puff, and just slide the graph paper over and send a second shot and get a hit. Where I live in Florida, we have so much mirage 10.5 months out of the year that it swallows up and eats, any type of trace and things like that, where it's really difficult to put that screen I've got to superimpose and look through to see what's behind that to find out what's going on. So I like a very uncluttered field of view.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that I don't have any grid style reticles. I absolutely use them, but I think they're a specialty use case tool. And I make a golf analogy with this in the classes all the time, that if I'm in a sand trap, I use a sand wedge and it's the tool, but I don't play the whole course with it.
Makes sense. So potentially keeping it more simple, keeping the reticle more simple may be an advantage over a broader spectrum.
I think
than having, something like a Horus reticle, so Tremor 3 or something that has a lot of information could be a little overwhelming to a new shooter as well.
It can be overwhelming to a new shooter,
and
I think it can lead them astray quicker. That folks that are new to the precision rifle journey, that they want to learn a lot of these alternative and expedient workflows that they're quicker, they're fun, they're interesting range games to play, and I've spoken with enough professional users that yeah, they absolutely have application on a two-way range, but being able to do it right with simple to start with, it really makes you revisit those and rethink them.
Sure.
And I see a lot of people, there is a lot of turnover, the secondhand market with scopes, that people went with whatever was a contract system with the military. Just because the military went with it doesn't necessarily mean it's right for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We've discussed that a lot on just videos we've done, that the selection by the government does not necessarily mean, and you don't understand maybe what the requirements were across the broad spectrum as the consumer. So they may have had to make a choice that was not the best for you because it had to be the best choice over a large force of people or whatever. So I would say, do some research on your reticle, maybe talk to people about it first. Don't just click on the first one that, like you said, smiles at you on the website. And if you have no reference, maybe go with something that's a little more simple that meets your kind of list of needs. If you want to actually measure things with it and stuff like that, you'd want to do that. So we have a bunch of things that attach to the optic and then attach our optic to the action. Mm-hmm. So we got these things right here from Flatline Ops. One is the Halo X, which is our leveling bubble.
Yes.
So if you want to talk about that.
There's not a distance threshold that I say, well, because we're shooting at, in excess of 1,800 meters with this weapon, that we need a bubble level for that. You need a bubble level for any long range shooting. Long range is a bit of an ambiguous term of what distance qualifies it as long range. Canting a rifle, bottom line, sends the projectile in the direction of the cant. If my gun is not level and I've rolled the reticle over to the left, I'm going to be setting those projectiles to the left. And once I get off of a nice flat range and we're on a side hill, shooting at a target on a side hill, it's very easy to get lost into what level actually is. This makes sure that I have a quick reference right before I'm going to go ahead and send that. Another product that Flatline Ops did was a great idea. The Bone Spur started out for the Leupold Mark V series. These guys have a nice speed, power, throw lever, whatever we're going to call it these days, just so that we're not with just fingers working on just the little ring or with just a little nub. I've got a big piece on here that I can actually hook and hang on to. Problem being is if I've got a certain amount of elevation dialed in, that can be at an unfortunate angle that I've got to maybe break my shooting position to peek around to see. Once my face is on the gun and I'm in the optic, I'm in the optic. I'm not rubbernecking and coming on and off this thing. I want to stay in the glass. So the Bone Spur that they did just basically gives you a window that you still get that capability of something to hook onto, and I can peek right through it and see all the way to my elevation turret. I shoot both eyes open all the time. I can resolve my bubble level while I'm looking through the optic and paying attention to what's the information I'm getting through the scope at the same time. Sure. It's the brain does the math for you. I see both the bubble level and the scope image simultaneously and can keep resolving and keeping that bubble level where I need it.
One of the more important pieces of any long-range weapon system is actually how you're mounting the optic
Very much so.
to the gun. We did go with Badger Ordnance. Mm-hmm. And this is the C1 Max.
Badger has been a standard in military rifles for a long time. And I know we just said don't go with what the military goes with most of the time. This was a company that earned their keep. Sure. And they've just had a long-standing reputation and history of quality and good performance. Why a base over rings? Well, because we can. And what does that do for us? Well, I'm buying the fact that Badger Ordnance has done the work for us in the sense that we don't have to worry about any type of scope ring lapping. Lapping would be if I had two separate rings on an island, on this Picatinny surface that we've mounting everything to, that one might be a little twisted, angled, something, because I've got 2 separate pieces going on. There may be some damage. I may have an out of spec rail. One of these surfaces might not quite be to spec the way it needs to, and that can lead to misalignment. When I'm dealing with this thing as one piece, none of that do I have to worry about. You ever, take a scope off of a rifle or see an old one in a bin somewhere, and it's got that line, kind of cut through the anodizing versus just that smooth. A proper mount won't leave ring marks. It will have held the scope properly, supported through all of this surface area. Badger Ordnance did the math on how much surface area we need to get good clamping force. It's full of win. So.
And also, we're going to be mounting on top of the optic.
We need a diving board.
Laser
So
rangefinder,
we are replacing the forward ring cap with a specific ring cap that is this series of part numbers and components are specifically for use with the Wilcox Raptor. In that configuration, there is more than one mounting solution for the Raptor in that originally, it did not include this aluminum section here, this very saddlebag style mount. That could get a little too low. And if I could end up with this thing saddlebagged on down with some of our larger clip-on devices, the MUNs, PBS 27, or my favorite clip-on of all time, the 8UNS 140, is phenomenal. That's a very large device. And illuminators and things like that can start casting shadows. So this is elevated a little bit with that aluminum. It gives us that standoff that we need. And this particular set of accessories Badger Ordnance did, they work with groups that are using these same devices. It's not theoretical for them. They've tested it. They've come up with the best solution to put this together. And you've got the program here.
All right, guys, so we're wrapping it up. We took all these parts, we put them together. Thanks, Mike, for coming out and really helping us, bring this thing to life.
You're welcome.
Selecting everything, helping us put it together the right way. Nothing's on backwards. I don't think we have any extra pieces or bolts. Maybe you have one extra piece. We don't need that. You always have one extra bolt at the end of a rifle build, and you do exactly that with it.
Not important.
But anyways, the same old spiel, guys. Like, subscribe, helps the channel out a lot, keeps us making videos and content for you that is useful. If you want to comment about PRS and how you're a PRS god and your practice scores are always, number one, comment down below for us or just privately message me on Instagram, whichever works for you. And we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks.